Thought patterns. Life is all about how you think. Success or failure, however you define them, will only amplify your thought process, especially unhealthy patterns of thinking. Right behind your thoughts are your feelings. So if your thinking is unhealthy, how you feel about yourself will most likely hold you down. And also know that emotions are more powerful than your logic, so your feelings can always overpower you and send you into a very slippery ditch. Most of us are so focused on getting somewhere or obtaining something that we forget happiness lives in the way we see the world, our beliefs about ourselves, and the way we think. So what you think and how you think will determine your path, but more importantly, if you'll be walking or riding tigers. Oh, that's stupid. I was picturing Harold and Kumar for some reason. Okay, so how you think. Cognitive distortions, the basics. Cognitive distortions are simply ways that our mind convinces us of something that isn't really true. These inaccurate thoughts are usually used to reinforce negative thinking or emotions, telling ourselves things that sound rational and accurate, but really only serve to keep us feeling bad about ourselves by playing broken records. So I'll give you what I believe are the 9 most common cognitive distortions and see if any of these resonate with you.
Filtering. We take the negative details and magnify them while filtering out all the positive aspects of a situation. For instance, a person may pick out a single unpleasant detail and dwell on it exclusively so that their vision of reality becomes darkened or distorted. Do you filter? If so, when? Write it down. How does that type of thinking bring you anxiety? What is your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your day-to-day life? Polarized thinking, or black and white thinking. In polarized thinking, things are either black or white. We have to be perfect or we're a failure. There's no middle ground. You place people or situations in either or categories, with no shades of gray or allowing for the complexity of most people and situations. If your performance falls short of perfect, you see yourself as a total failure. Is your thinking polarized? If so, when? A lot of this happens in business and in sports. How does that type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your day-to-day life? Overgeneralization. In this cognitive distortion, we come to a general conclusion based on a single incident or a single piece of evidence. If something bad happens only once, we expect it to happen over and over again. A person may see a single unpleasant event as part of a never-ending pattern of defeat. Do you overgeneralize? If so, when? How does this type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your everyday life? Jumping to conclusions. Without individuals saying so, we know what they're feeling and why they're acting the way they do. In particular, we're able to determine how people are feeling towards us. For example, a person may conclude that someone is reacting negatively toward them but doesn't actually bother to find out if they're correct. Another example is that a person may anticipate things will turn out badly and will feel convinced that their prediction is already an established fact. This happens a lot in relationships and friendships. Do you jump to conclusions? If so, when? How does that type of thinking create anxiety? What is your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your everyday life? Catastrophizing. We expect disaster to strike no matter what. This is referred to as magnifying or minimizing. We hear about a problem and use what-if questions. For example, what if tragedy strikes? What if it happens to me? What if I starve? What if I die? For example, a person might exaggerate the importance of insignificant events, such as their mistake or someone else's achievement. Or they may inappropriately shrink the magnitude of significant events until they appear tiny. For example, a person's own desirable qualities or someone else's imperfections. Do you catastrophize? If so, when? How does that type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your day-to-day life? Personalization. Personalization is a distortion where a person believes that everything others do or say is some kind of a direct personal reaction to them. We all know this person, right? We call them too sensitive. What if it's actually a cognitive thing instead of a sensitivity thing? A person engaging in personalization may also see themselves as the cause of some unhealthy external event that they were not responsible for. For example, we were late to the dinner party and caused the hostess to overcook the meal. If only I had pushed my husband to leave on time, this wouldn't have happened. Do you personalize? If so, when? How does that type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your day-to-day life? Blaming. We hold other people responsible for our pain or take the other track and blame ourselves for every problem. For example, stop making me feel bad about myself. Nobody can make us feel any particular way. Only we have control over our own emotions and emotional reactions. Do you blame? If so, when? How does this type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your everyday life? Shoulds. We have a list of ironclad rules about how ourselves and others should behave. People who break the rules make us angry, and we feel guilty when we violate these rules. A person may often believe they are trying to motivate themselves with shoulds and shouldn'ts, as if they have to be punished before they can do anything. For example, I really should exercise. I shouldn't be so lazy. Musts and oughts are also offenders. The emotional consequence is guilt. When a person directs should statements towards others, they often feel anger, frustration, and resentment. How often do you use should statements? How does this type of thinking create anxiety? What's your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your everyday life? Emotional reasoning. We believe that what we feel must be true automatically. If we feel stupid and boring, then we must be stupid and boring. You assume that your unhealthy emotions reflect the way things really are. I feel it, therefore it must be true. Do you reason emotionally? If so, when? Write it down. How does that type of thinking bring you anxiety? What is your behavior because of this distortion? How does it play out in your day-to-day life?
So how do we get rid of distorted thinking? First, you have to be aware of your distortions and how they play out in your life. Everything starts with awareness. Put it on paper. You'll start to see patterns. Second, think about what your life, relationships, work would look like if you didn't have these distortions. Really think about it. Imagine it. Play it out. How would that change in thinking change your life? In all areas, because these distortions bleed into all areas of our lives. Then how would that change in your life make you feel about yourself, your worth, and your ability? Now that's the tipping point. That's the place to get to. When people start feeling and believing different about themselves, their worth, their life will change. When you change your state, your life will also change. Third, now start to try to correct your cognitive distortions by making a conscious effort to distinguish your distorted thinking from the truth. For example, if you, like me, get into the habit of extreme thinking, all or nothing, black or white, life or death, notice when you do that and how that affects your mood, feelings, and behavior. And know that it's distorted thinking and not truth. Use logic because how you feel, emotions, are more powerful and will suck you back into your distorted thought patterns. So logically map out the results of your distorted thinking. 4, give yourself a new experience. Now, experience is where you'll get the most traction. And now that you're aware, deconstruct and correct your distortions. Focus on one distortion at a time. You have to get to a place where you actually experience how this new way of thinking, no matter how small or temporary, translates into your behavior and reduces your anxiety. Notice the positive impact it has on the way others respond to you. Notice how your energy changes. You need to experience the difference in order to get motivated to keep going. Changing the way you think is an ongoing process. Like working out, it's all about repetition and getting comfortable with the uncomfortable. It's all about seeing results and using that as leverage to continue to think and live different.